Hey, welcome back to the How to Podcast series. Happy to be back with you again and enjoying October already. Isn't that great? October's here and the time is right for dancing in the streets. Apparently, as the song goes, I guess. That was actually summer's here and the time is right for dancing in the streets, but I like October. October is my anniversary month with my gorgeous wife, Jen. 31 years, everybody, this year. My wife deserves some sort of prize for that. 31 years with this guy? Wow. Something. She needs something. A payback for that one. Anyways, I'm not that bad, really. In small amounts and from a distance, I'm quite enjoyable, as my wife would attest to. And we're here to talk about something that I hear discussed very often in podcasting. It happens usually, most likely, at the end of our podcast when we're closing everything down and ending the episode. For our YouTube friends, they usually do it right off the top because they realize that that's the most important part, to hook people to like and share, ring the bell and do the thing. They do that on YouTube at the beginning. Podcasting is a little different than YouTube. Always has been, always will be. And we do the call to action. I'm doing air quotes around that for those who can't see me. Call to action, we usually do that at the end. So go to my website, subscribe to my newsletter, go and check me out on Instagram. All those things are calls to action. Some people do too many of them, just so you know, like way too many. Should limit those as much as possible. But the idea around call to action is a marketing term. It's something that is kind of bled its way into podcasting, kind of wormed its way into our speech and what we talk about. But it's really a marketing term. And for those of us like myself who don't have ads and don't have sponsors and don't really care to ever at all. So when I see those emails coming in from people wanting to sponsor the show, I can tell you don't listen because you didn't hear me just say, I'm not looking for sponsors for the show. I don't do that. So, yeah. When I look at call to action, it's a marketing term. And for me, marketing throughout my podcast and using marketing speech and marketing talk doesn't work for me in my show because that's not how I wire the show. That's not how I do the show. And I don't enjoy listening to it on other shows, to be quite honest. If you do that on your show, that's fine. I usually just skip along. And every time you give me an ad break, I just pull out my phone and hit the skip button. It's nothing against you, but I'm just not into commercials. That's why I don't listen to radio. Radio is mostly commercials and a bunch of random chatter and then a couple good songs, usually repeated several times during the day. So I don't do that very often. I like podcasting because it's different than radio. It always will be, and I hopefully always will remain different than radio because you see what's happening in radio today. It's just sliding off the charts. And go ask somebody who's younger than 19 what radio station they listen to and look at the look on their face when you ask them that question. You're like, what's radio? So yeah, it's kind of like the newspaper of the audio space. Yeah, right. So when we look at podcasting, this whole idea around the call to action, when I think about this, I just think about how maybe we can do this better. Because when the whole concept of a call to action has really deep roots in marketing and advertising, its application in podcasting requires a little more nuanced approach than the hard sell that call to action typically falls under. So this history of call to actions and how podcasters can adapt this concept to better serve your listener, that's why we're here on the How to Podcast series. Thank you for being here. Let's go. So the evolution of the call to action. The term call to action originated in traditional advertising where marketers sought to prompt immediate responses from their consumers. And initially, the CTAs, call to actions, were directed commands like buy now, hurry in store, limited quantities, act now, call today. These are calls to actions that are kind of giving you the sense that if you don't get off your couch or get to the store or act now, you're going to miss out on this opportunity. So it is a call to action. It is a call to you to do something. So that's kind of the roots of a CTA, a call to action, which we talk about in podcasting. And as marketing evolved, so did these CTAs, calls to action. They became more sophisticated and more tailored to specific audiences and segments and platforms. Okay, so they've kind of grown over time. I think that we need to rethink the whole concept of calls to action in podcasting. For us as podcasters, the traditional calls to action model often falls a little short because podcasts are more of an intimate forum, a medium where we can connect with our audience one-on-one. It fosters a personal connection between the host and the listener. The listener feels like they know the host, even though they've never met them in person. The host feels like they know their listener. And there's this whole world that we're creating around our podcast. And this relationship calls for a more thoughtful approach, I think, to engagement than simply barking commands at your audience to do the thing at the end of the episode. So instead of a call to action, I'm proposing that podcasters should consider creating more of a pathway to action, a more gentler, more audience-centric type approach that really kind of prioritizes the listener and the benefit to the listener more than the benefit to the host of the podcast. I believe that anything you put at the end of your show for your listeners to act upon should benefit them. To go and buy your book benefits you as an author. To go and buy a book that helps you be a better father, that's framed in the context of helping the person who purchases the item. I think that we need to think about how do we frame our calls to action to benefit the listener. For me to say to you, go to my Buy Me a Coffee and buy me a coffee to help support the show. Okay, as a listener, who benefits there? Most likely me, as the host. I'm the one receiving the money through the Buy Me a Coffee donation, right? That makes sense. What does the listener get out of the donation to me to support my show? To say to your listener, it costs a lot of money to run a podcast. What does that mean to your listener? They don't care how much money it costs. They listen to your podcast for free for the most part. So to you telling them that it's expensive to do this, you're talking about yourself now. You're not talking about your listener. So there's ways that you can reframe and reformat how you talk to your audience at the end of your show that gives the spotlight on them, puts on them. What's their benefit? What do they get out of supporting you? What do they get out of responding to a question of the month? For example, I do that on the How to Podcast series right here. The question of the month is all framed around promoting other podcasters and their shows, using the question of the month as an excuse to have you respond through email or voice messages. Then I can create an episode that promotes you as you respond to the question. So it's a way to get engagement. Yes, I could just come on and say, hey, everybody, please leave me a voice message. Okay, that's benefiting me. That doesn't benefit you. But then when I ask you to leave a voice message that talks about your show so that we can tell other people about it, yes, I am benefiting by you doing that and helping me create that content. But really, the true benefit is for you to shout out your show and get more people to come and listen to you. That's the whole idea for the question of the month. So it's not about the question. It's not about the answer. It's about promoting you. So the benefit to you is participating in the question of the month. It's about you. It's not about me. So simple things like that, where you reframe how you do it for your audience, can bring in better engagement and better buy-in from your audience to participate in what you're asking them to do or be involved in. So I think we maybe need to think about how we say the call to action versus the pathway to action. And what I found was an episode on a podcast. We had Sarah Losey on the show a while back, and she came on to talk about her show, podcast that she does with Larry Roberts called Branded. And they had a guest on who was talking about website design. And he actually went into a little side conversation on this whole thing about calls to action versus a path to action. And it really reinforced what I was already working on for this show. And listening to his comments just kind of really resonated with me. So I wanted to share a little clip from Sarah and Larry's podcast. I'll have a link so you can listen to the whole thing as well. But this is a little clip from the Branded podcast where the guest talks more about why we should rethink using the term calls to action and why we should be more softer and gentler and having like a pathway or a path to action for the audience. So here's a little clip from the show, and we'll come back and talk about some of the bad types of CTAs that people use and maybe an improved approach for it. But here's a little clip from Brandon.
We're talking about benefit-oriented reason to stay.
Yes.
And the next piece of this is a bit controversial. And I know you guys love a little bit of controversy. One of the things I'll tell people is stop saying call to action.
Okay, hold on.
No, always gets
clarification question. Stop saying the words call to action on the website?
No, just stop. Just take it out of your vocabulary altogether.
Oh, this is interesting. I mean, that's what
Say more.
that we launch podcasts we launch branded podcasts for brands, businesses, and organizations, and that's one of the things that we say all the time. You have to have a CTA. What is your call to action?
It's like when I say this, people do exactly what you guys are doing. They're like, "Wait, what?"
Say more.
This is this is crazy talk. Let me explain.
Please.
Call to action is a marketer shouting at customers, telling them what to do. People don't want to be shouted at. They don't want to be told what to do. Your customer is on their journey. So rather than creating calls to action, what you want to be doing is you want to be creating pathways. Make their pathway clear. Where should they go next? And why should they go there? How does it support their journey? Now, effectively, a call to action and a pathway are exactly the same thing. But the mindset shift is really important. Because when you start thinking about it in terms of I'm creating pathways, you're thinking about it in terms of how I'm supporting my buyer's journey. And when you do that, when they pick that pathway, two very powerful things have happened. They've told you exactly who they are, and they've given you permission to give them more information. When I audit websites, the most common problem that I see is not copy and design, although that's often a disaster too.
Tell us how you really feel.
The most common problem I see is an absence of strategy. It's all very pretty. Sometimes they've spent a boatload of money with a designer to get something that doesn't function. Most businesses, 80% of their revenue is coming from 20% of their customers, Pareto's principle. Now, the specific numbers are probably going to be different, but that concept is valid. Inside of that 20%, there might be 2, max 3 subsegments. If you create a pathway, a people like you kind of call out for those 2 or 3 subsegments, you're going to be attracting and giving support to your best customers. Because if they're already if that kind of person is representing 80% of your revenue, you want more of them. So call out to them, make it clear that you've got something special for them. They pick the pathway, they click the button, they go to a landing page, they've told you who they are. So now you can present your services, your offer, whatever it is you're doing in a way that's very germane to who they are. And they will pay attention because they've elected to be there. And your ultimate conversion event might very well be set up a schedule. But now you've got individual forms on each one of these landing pages. So when somebody sets up that schedule, you already have information about who they are and what they're looking for, as opposed to a generic contact us form where you have no idea. Right? Does this make sense? This is why I'm saying that, pathway and call to action are effectively the same thing, but the mindset shift is really important.
Yeah, it's absolutely critical, and it can be very difficult to understand the need for that mindset shift because traditionally we just come up going, hey, if we present our services, we're going to answer the questions that they're asking, and they're going to buy. I mean, that's just what we inherently think. Not that it's in any stretch of the imagination correct, but when you start thinking about reframing the value of whatever those services are and presenting it in a way that solves a problem, that answers their question without them having to dig, I can see where that opens up these pathways for engagement, for for them to purchase your services, whatever it may be.
Right. And
so
you've got
it definitely makes sense.
6 seconds. You've given them a reason to stay.
Yeah.
They're engaged. They're leaning forward. They're paying attention.
It catches them. And
information. You're not asking them to sort through. You've regurgitated everything you do on homepage and asked the consumer, well, you can sort through all this and figure out what's for you and what's not. You've done the work. And people will appreciate that. When I was back in the day, my background is big brands and big budgets and all that good stuff. And I was working with a long distance telecommunications carrier. And loyalty was a huge problem. People were switching from AT&T to MCI to Sprint and all around. And we commissioned a research study. I don't remember any of the details from the research study, but I remember one sentence that the researcher who specializes in loyalty research, one of the things he said in the preamble, he said, in his experience, 90% of loyalty problems can be traced to a flawed sales process. And that one sentence is the sort of one of the underpinning principles that have influenced how I think about these things, why I make statements like stop saying call to action. Because call to action is a marketer shouting at a customer and telling them what to do. A pathway is supporting the journey that your customer is on and giving them the next step that they need to take to get the information that they are looking for. Which would you prefer?
So, great question. Which would you prefer? Do you rather be yelled at, told what to do? Do you see the sense of the feeling of that? Just by changing the term from call to action to pathway to action, seems a gentler, more leading and guiding and not a to-do list item. Do you see what's happening there? And I really love how that guest framed that. Again, I have a link branded for Larry and Sarah's podcast. Go listen. They're really fun to listen to. I like that show because they don't always agree. And that's a good thing because we need more of that in podcasting. So let's talk about some bad CTA examples and maybe how we can improve it. So here's one that I hear often. Visit our website to buy our merchandise. Okay, so that could be a bad call to action. Why? Because it directs the sales pitch, can feel like it's like a little self-serving in the context of a podcast to a listener. You just want to sell your shirts and your mugs. What benefit is it to the audience? Improving on this approach, we could say something like, we have a collection of resources related to today's topic on our website, including some exclusive content for you, our great listener. And while you're there, you might also want to check out our merch store and where you can purchase stuff that helps to support the show. There you go. Little things like that could be a better approach than go to our website and buy a shirt. Do you see that? The context is a little different. It's more of a pathway, a benefit to the listener, not just a benefit to you as the host. So think about how you can reframe that in your next episode. Another bad call to action example could be follow us on social media. Okay, what do I get out of that? I go click follow on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, whatever. I go click the button, then what? Like, what did it do for me? Why are you asking me to do that? This is a generic request that doesn't really provide a compelling reason for anybody to do anything. It's kind of a waste of time, I feel. And that's why you don't hear me say it often on the show, because I don't think it really adds a lot of value to you, for you to follow me on social media. I really don't think it gives you any benefit. Listening to the show and following the show gives you benefit, because then you can hear when the next episode comes out, and you don't need me to come on social media to tell you that the next episode's there, because you already know. You have a phone and it gives you an update. So that's easy. That benefits you. You know when the next episode comes out. Great. When we tell people to follow us on social media, we could reframe it to something more like this. How about join our vibrant community over on Instagram? This is where we continue the conversation that we're having here today on the show, but we do more in depth and we answer more questions and we interact with our listeners over on Instagram. That's where we do our social gatherings best. So if you want to get beyond just listening to the show and you want to interact with the show and you want to interact with me as the host, find me on Instagram. I don't do that. I don't say that. I say, come to our meetups on Saturdays, because then you get to talk to other podcasters, myself, and ask podcast questions in a great, safe environment where nobody feels judged. So come to our meetups and ask your questions. There's no dumb question, because we're all here to help you, and we're all here to help each other and support each other. So come to our meetups. I like meetups better than social media, because social media is fake to me for the most part and very transient, just kind of here, in and out. It's here today, it's gone tomorrow, right? It's like talking to a parade. So I would love to send you to our meetups. So that's an improved approach to follow me on social media, is give them a reason to go to wherever you're sending them and why it benefits them. That's the big thing. Why does it benefit them? An invitation like this to listeners to become more active participants in an ongoing dialogue extends the podcast beyond the podcast and allows for interaction and engagement and another level of connection with your audience that you don't have in just simply recording an episode and pressing post and hoping somebody listens. So Kevin Palmieri was on the show a while back. He talked about giving your podcast audience a way to self-identify, to raise their hand and say, I listen to your show and my name is, and here's what I love about your podcast. And so I use SpeakPipe, I use Buy Me a Coffee, I use my website, I use meetups, different avenues to reach different people the way they feel most comfortable. So what are you doing for your calls to action? Again, are you demanding, are you yelling at your audience to do something? Kind of like a drill sergeant in the Army, drop and give me 20. Are you doing stuff like that to your audience? Are you leading them to something that benefits them the most? Because they, at the end of the day, need to be the primary focus of any pathway or call, anything that you do at the end of your show, where you ask and invite your audience to be a part of whatever you're doing. Think about framing everything you do from the beginning of your show, the middle to the end. Always frame it to the context of the listener, not about you. So when I hit play on a podcast and the podcast host comes on and tells me about all their awards, everything they've done, how long they've been doing it, why they're the expert, and they're like trying to prove to me that they're worth listening to, that puts me off, because I'm not here to hear your resume. I'm here to hear the show. And I usually skip through all that. So I don't care if you've won an award or not. I don't care if I ever win an award for this, because that's not why I'm doing this. I'm not here to lift myself up and to say I'm the voice of podcasting. By no means am I doing that. I want to create a safe place for you to explore your questions, find support, and build a podcast that you know and love. That's the reason why I'm doing this. And I bring some of my best friends on in the podcasting space to let them hear their opinions and how they are doing their show, so it's not a single voice in podcasting. We don't need that anymore. We need a community of podcasters who come together and support each other. That's what we need. More of that and less of a single voice telling you how you should do it and telling you that you're doing it wrong if you don't do it their way. That's the whole crux of why we're doing this show, is it's all about multiple voices, differing opinions, different ways to do things, but you get to pick the one that works right for you. So no one's pushed out of here saying, oh, I can't be a podcaster because I don't blah, 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 or I don't have blah, blah, blah. It's about you. This whole show is about you. So as podcasters, our goal should be to create paths to action that enrich our listeners' experiences, that complement what we do in our show, rather than simply issuing commands to our audience. We are not drill sergeants. We are more guides, tour guides to our podcast. By focusing on providing value and fostering this community that we're building and creating interactive opportunities for your audience to speak to you and for you to speak to your audience, we can build a stronger, more engaged audience for our podcast. And those who choose to act on what we're giving to them as options, that benefit them, they will see the benefits in following your suggested next steps after the episode. So again, it could be a social media platform. It could be a meetup group. It could be your website. It could be a buy me a coffee. It could be your SpeakPipe. There's so many ways that people can connect and build the next step in the relationship. So I want you to be crystal clear on your next podcast episode that you're framing everything you do from the beginning of your show, the intro, the main body of your show, and the outro is all focused on the listener, not focused on you. People, especially new people, they don't care who you are. When they come and press play on your podcast, they just found your show. Somebody recommended it. They found it through search. They don't care who you are. They just want to know what you're talking about. And they want to know if this is a good fit for them. So if they come in and it's just all about you right from the beginning, people are going to click away. They're going to go, this person is just full of themselves. And I don't care how many awards you won. I'm here for what I'm here for. So the intro should be focused on your listener. The content should be focused on your listener. And the outro, however you frame that and wherever you want to send people after the episode's over, should all benefit the listener. And if any of those three components don't benefit your listener, you need to rethink how you're doing your show, because you are missing opportunities to build connection with your community. So the intro benefits the audience, the podcast itself, the content, what you talk about in the episode benefits the audience, and the outro benefits the audience. Again, all three have to be in place for every episode. So go back, listen to just your outros. Go back and listen to just your intros. Who's the main primary focus of your intro? You or your audience? Who is the main focus of your outro? Follow me on social media. That's you. It's about you in that moment. Buy me a coffee. That's about you in the moment, right? But when you can frame it in terms that help your listener to build a stronger relationship with you and build community around your show, and they walk away with something that makes them better because they press play, that's the main focus of our podcast. And I'm challenging you to be critical of your own show. And then go listen to other shows, some even the most popular shows, and go, wow, is the intro about me as a listener? Is the body of the content about me as a listener? And is the outro about me as a listener? And you'll start picking up on some of these celebrated podcasters and podcasts that are really self-focused, and they just are there to build up the host. And for me, that leaves me a little bit wanting more. So stop yelling at your audience. You're not a drill sergeant. You are a tour guide. And you want to be gently leading people on a pathway that brings them to the next logical step after your show and throughout your show. If you have any questions about how to grow your show and make your show better, and you just want to jump in, again, we have our meetup groups. You can find that at howtopodcast.ca as well. There's a calendar invite here in the show notes. It's just for you, listener of the show, and we can get together and talk about anything you want. And you can ask any question about anything to do with podcasting. I would love to help you. And it's there for you, and it's only in this episode. And it's not on my website. So go ahead, use that link, use it often, and let's get together and talk about your show or your idea or anything around podcasting. Again, the benefit is to you. I want to be here to serve you as a listener of the show. Thanks for listening. Keep podcasting and keep being you, because there's a lack of you in the world and we need more of it. Thanks for being here. So you're a podcaster and you podcast alone. You are in your home, you're in your studio, you're in your closet, and you podcast. And you put everything out there in the world and you're thinking, man, I'd love to meet another podcaster and not feel so alone. I wish there was a way to meet up with other podcasters and talk about my journey, ask my questions in a safe place where others there are also podcasters at different levels. Some people have been doing this a long time. Maybe some podcasters are brand new like me. And I'd love to be able to ask questions and do community with others. Maybe find a guest for my show or be a guest and ask a question that's bothering me about podcasting that I haven't seen or already got an answer to. I wish there was a group for me. Dave, do you know of a group where they do all of that and They do group hugs, virtual group hugs. Yeah, we do. It's our meetup. And you know, guess what? You're invited to come to our meetups. They are amazing. Not because of me by any stretch of imagination. It's because they're great because of the people who show up. You're going to meet some of the nicest podcasters you've ever met. There's no judgment. There's no talking down to you. It's not about me. It's about the group. And there's many times where I don't even have to talk. Each of the people coming bring great expertise and insights that can help you grow your show, to help you be a better person. And they're there to support you. It's our meetups, and you can find them at their howtopodcast.ca website. Come join us. There's over 200 people in our group, and we'd love to have you there. Lots of room for you. Come be a part of our meetups and meet other podcasters. Don't do it alone. Podcasting should never be done alone. Come join us. howtopodcast.ca. See you at our meetups.